Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Xaereth Prevails, a Grand Arena story. Championship Season 3 is here, and I won't lie, I'm really excited to be able to start doing these episodes again. I've been stuck in alt hell trying to get all of my alt videos out, and even though I know that there are a few people who really enjoy those videos and really get a lot out of them, I find this Division 1 play to be a lot more interesting and meaningful, at least to myself in particular, and so really excited to start working on these again. I've got a really tough and interesting match to show you guys, and I'm really excited for that. But first, I wanted to fill you guys in with a little bit of context here. I've been able to make it into Kyber all 3 different times that I've had an opportunity to, which is a great honor. It's really exciting, and I actually just want to take a minute to kind of boast or brag or something. It's a really exciting accomplishment, and if I can't have a little bit of fun with it, I don't know what I can do, frankly. And that's probably just a lack of creativity on my end. Probably I could do something really great and productive with that. Instead, I made this.
Political analysts say this may be too little, too late.
Hi, I'm with the Port Commission.
I'm from the Athlete's Foot Foundation.
Brother. Hey, can you get my demo tape to somebody?
And for those of you who have watched my alt videos and these, sorry for the reuse of that video. It's just too good to pass up, frankly. It's one of my favorite scenes in almost any movie, and I really enjoyed it. So anyways, I've made it into Kyber 3 times, and that means absolutely nothing for this current match. There's a lot of really interesting things going on here, and let's start talking about that, because right now, as far as I'm concerned, I'm at 0 and 0. Now, the very first group phase in any Grand Arena Championship is going to have the most potential for facing some of your opponents who are maybe not as skilled or have as developed of a roster, just because everyone is sorted by leagues, and if you're in Carbonite, then you're going to face people in Carbonite. If you're in Bronzium, you're going to face people in Bronzium. And, at the very start, the opening round, everyone is in Carbonite. And so, you're going to be facing just about anyone as long as your GPs match up in the matchmaking algorithm. And so I was hoping that I would kind of get an easy opponent, frankly, at the very start. You want to be able to start strong and everything. And honestly, this is kind of the opposite of what I wanted to face. My opponent had previously made Kyber League, and that wasn't very awesome for me. They had almost as many banners as I did, accumulated over the course of the last 2 championships. They had way more relics and way more gear on all of their different characters. My only real advantage here, I had a few extra speed mods, and then I had 30 more Zetas, and that is a huge number of Zetas, and that means that my opponent wouldn't have as fleshed out of teams as I did. However, you can kind of make up for that with gear and relics and everything. I wasn't really sure how this was going to go. My opponent had a really strong roster. They had more geared characters in every category than I did, and it was going to be really tricky. You can see their stats here, and I have 2 more offensive wins. That means that they didn't full clear their opponent 2 different times total. They actually had more undersized wins than I did, and they have pretty close to the same defensive wins. So this was really going to be a tough matchup. I did not really want to face someone this good in my first round, but that was kind of what I had to work with. So, had to go into it. They had made Kyber, you can see at the very bottom of the sheet here. They made Kyber at 320-ish place, like that. That's pretty solid. They were definitely someone that I wanted to take seriously. Now, when I looked at the board, it was really crazy. Like, we had the exact same layout as far as what leaders are going to be on there. It was like this crazy mirror match here. And so I didn't really want to look and see what they had. I was pretty sure that almost all of their teams were going to be stronger than mine, and they did have Watt with their General Grievous squad, which is really problematic for me, and Nightsisters, which they weren't necessarily as fast as some of my counters, so that was good. And then the other squad that was blocking the ship zone were a lot of standard ones, but the Jango Nest team especially kind of frightened me, just because Relic Nest is really strong, and I didn't want to have to face that. Now, after I took those screenshots, I wasn't able to attack right away. I had date night and all kinds of other crazy stuff. So my opponent did get a few attacks in, and I was really happy to see that they had failed an attack on both my Nightsisters and my General Grievous squad. I'd been really working hard at putting extra relic levels on a few of those characters and on, remodding Spirit and B1, so that was great. And then my opponent had also failed on my bounty hunters, which is also wonderful. And it gave me some hope. It gave me a little bit of wiggle room to be able to deal with some of this stuff that I was going to have to face. However, my opponent's failures had also gotten me thinking about what kind of squads they might have saved on defense. And, this new format is kind of frustrating because we only have one zone. There's only 2 obscured teams there, so there's not very much unknown. I knew that my ships were going to probably be able to counter whatever my opponent's ships had, and so I only had 2 squads that I really had to guess about. Unfortunately, General Grievous droids with Watt are really problematic for me because I've had a few times facing it. I've won a few times, and I've lost my share of times as well. And I really didn't want to have to waste my Jedi Revan team on them. My opponent's mods were really good. All of their relic levels were on the right characters, and they had all their Zetas. It was a really strong team, and so I didn't really know what to do with that, so I left that alone for a minute. I penciled in Imperial troopers against Nightsisters because all of my troopers are faster than my opponents, and rather than my opponent's Nightsisters, and so I would probably be able to beat that matchup fairly easily, at least theoretically. I decided I wanted to use my Kylo Ren First Order team against their First Order team, but all the squads kind of on the side are they're kind of the second consideration. Like, you want to be able to clear the first zone first and be able to see what's in the back, so all these other matchups are kind of just speculative. So I have bounty hunters with Nest, and I could beat that with either Jedi Knight Revan or Commander Luke. I could use my Commander Luke or Padme against the Nute Separatists, and then the real question was what was in the back. And so I kind of assumed that my opponent had put Darth Revan in the back just because looking at their profile, I saw that their arena team was Padme, and so Padme was probably fully capable of being able to take out any Darth Revan team, and so they probably had put Darth Revan in the back, was what I was assuming, and it just wasn't that strong of a Darth Revan team, and I guess that I wanted to try my Padme team against it. I didn't know for sure if I could win, but I was pretty sure I could at least 2-shot it, if it came to that. The other slot, I wasn't really sure. I kind of assumed that my opponent would have a really strong team back there, something like Geonosians or clones or something. They did have a pretty decked out 5-star General Anakin, and so I really wasn't sure what to expect back there other than Darth Revan. And I needed to be prepared for that, but I decided that I needed to be one-shotting teams, and I knew my Darth Revan would be able to beat General Grievous, even with Watt, and so I decided I'd take Darth Revan here, just because I felt confident-ish in my Padme team, and just because my opponent had lost a couple matches, I had a little bit of padding to be able to 2-shot a team if I needed to. I wanted to take out Nightsisters first just because if something did go wrong, and it can go wrong with Imperial troopers, it's not foolproof. Even though I felt confident in this match, I wanted to make sure that if something did go wrong, that I would be able to reallocate my different resources and be able to counter them next, because they're pretty hard to get past without a specific team. So I do have a Imperial trooper squad here that's pretty specifically modded to be able to take out Nightsisters. I have Stark that goes first, gives everyone a buff, which increases turn meter. My Death Trooper goes next, and he throws his Dispel Grenade. Hopefully he hits Zombie and is able to dispel. After that, then I have Range Trooper go. He gives even more buffs. He gets assists, and then after that, it's kind of a free-for-all. Hopefully by then you've killed at least one Nightsister. If you haven't, then Veers and Snow Trooper will go next. And after that, it's just any man's guess on what's going to happen. And so you just want to do your AoEs, you want to do all your hits, and the Nightsisters didn't even get a turn here. So easy 60 banners, and now it was time to use my Darth Revan team on their Grievous, and I was a little bit nervous just because if they did have Darth Revan in the back, it could potentially just completely stop me from being able to full clear. Even though my Padme team was strong enough, I was pretty nervous about that, but I decided to go forward with the plan I had constructed.
Percy, are there rocks ahead? If they are, we all be dead.
Going into a matchup with Darth Revan against General Grievous does carry a certain element of risk, even though you have the Darth Revan team, which is the current best team in the meta, just because General Skywalker doesn't have a ton of 7-star Relic 7 copies right now. Even though you have that, General Grievous has the ability to just kind of one-shot your entire team if you're not careful. And so you see Watt, he's going to give that never-ending taunt to Magna Guard, and you can't really stop that. You know, he's always going to go first unless you have Han. But you can work around that. Now the goal here is to get fear onto General Grievous, or if you can't get fear onto him, you can try to just remove a lot of health from one of the characters but not kill them all the way. And if you can do that, then you put the death mark on General Grievous and you can just kill him right away. Now that didn't quite work out the way I wanted to. I hit Watt with a hit that was maybe too strong, apparently. But you know, General Grievous did go. He didn't kill my entire team. You can see all my protection is almost gone. But after that, I was able to do another good hit on one of the characters that didn't die, and then General Grievous had death mark, and I was just able to take him out with one hit. So one thing to keep in mind in this kind of matchup is every single character is there in support of General Grievous. Like, if you're using a General Grievous squad, you expect that General Grievous is going to be the one to kill everyone. You know, everyone else contributes to that, and B1 can do a lot of damage through just over time, you know, assisting every single time and doing his AoE and all that stuff. But General Grievous is going to be doing the bulk of that, and so once you take Grievous out, then the rest of the squad kind of just folds, and you know, that's always the case. My opponent's back zone, well, it did not have Darth Revan. It did have a clones team with Rex as the lead instead of General Skywalker, which kind of confused me, and then a Qi'ra timeout squad, which is not really a threat at all. So my opponent didn't really have many more teams that would threaten me, and you know, I decided that the biggest threat by far was the General Skywalker team with the clones, just because they all have a lot of relic levels on them, and General Skywalker is kind of a wild card. I didn't really know what to expect, but I figured, I mean, I have my Padme team that can go toe-to-toe with a lot of the General Skywalker teams out there, even when they're Relic 7, and even though Padme ends up getting destroyed a lot of times against Skywalker in the final match after I've killed all of the clones, I was fairly confident that my Padme would be able to take out this 5-star General Skywalker. And you can see here I debated for a while taking my own General Skywalker on the team, and I just at the end I decided to take my Barriss just because she would provide a little bit of extra healing just in case their offense proved to be a little stronger than I had anticipated. Generally speaking, Padme is a really great counter against clones because clones get so many different out-of-activation attacks and everything that you can really boost up your protection up stats. And, you know, you want protection up on all your guys because, of course, you want to generate courage. And once you're generating courage, you're dealing a crazy amount of damage with everyone, including with Barriss. You know, she can one-shot a lot of people, and so you know, you just want to kind of wait, suffer the barrage that's coming at you, and then just, you know, hit back. And, you know, you can see I've already taken out 2 of their stronger clones, and, you know, they have Echo and Ahsoka and General Skywalker. I didn't really know what to expect from Skywalker. I knew what to expect from the other 2, and so I kind of targeted Skywalker for a little bit, and he's just resilient like crazy, as you might expect. And I got a little bit ambitious with Kenobi there because 2 of my characters didn't even have buffs, so they didn't help assist. But at the end of the day, like that didn't really matter. I was able to take him out, and you know, the rest of the squad just kind of folded. It really, I mean, clones against Padme, it's not very close. I think, honestly, my Padme team is probably worse relicked and geared than that clone team, but it's just not a matchup that you want to face if you're clones. You know, and Padme didn't really have any other good uses here. I mean, she could have probably taken out any of these other teams except for maybe the Nest team. You know, just because Nest can be problematic to be able to take out with Padme, even though other people tell me I'm foolish for saying that. That's happened to me at least once, and I've heard about it happening multiple other times. So anyways, that was the perfect match for them. And now I found myself in a kind of strange position. Like I have my Jedi Knight Revan team, and I usually use them on General Grievous, and I didn't have General Grievous to take out with them, so I didn't really know what to do with myself here. On a happy note, though, I did remember that Jedi Knight Revan did absolutely counter Nest in quite a few circumstances, and you know that was my one hole. I didn't really know what I was going to do against that team, and so this Jango team is really fast and it's really tough, and you can see that even even with my Jedi Knight Revan being at pretty high speed, their boss went first and taunted, which is not always awesome, but I mean, at the end of the day, these bounty hunters are probably not going to be a match for the Jedi Knight Revan team. You know, Nest is going to provide certain question marks, and Boba can be kind of a wild card just because he can do his execute while I have a bunch of buffs up, and he might be able to just take someone out. I did want to get an undersized win here because one of my goals of this season is trying to accomplish all of my feats, and being able to do that will hopefully, if I can go 12-0, which that is a huge presumption, and I doubt that's really going to happen. If I did go 12-0, though, I would really like to be able to get into the top 50, and to be able to do that, I'm going to need to be able to finish all of the feats. And so you can see here, I took out Boba. Boba was the biggest threat, and actually my Jedi Revan was really close to just gone here. The offense on this team is really strong. The bounty hunters gain a ton of offense from their relic levels, and you can see Jango is at gear 13, so maybe I kind of underestimated this team, honestly. Like, you can see that I was able to take out all the rest of the bounty hunters relatively easily, but it wasn't without a little bit of stress on my end. You know, the good news was that Jolie was never really that close to being taken out, and so he could always just kind of fix whatever mess that I was going to be in, but, you know, you don't want to have to rely on that. That's not necessarily a great thing. So, okay, we have Nest back here, and, you know, if we do the mark on her, then every time we're hitting her, we're going to be reducing her max health. I'm not sure, actually. I think that it might be resistible, though that could be wrong. I did check before the match, and you know, this Nest had decently high tenacity. It was at like 130, which is decent. Not as great as it could be. Like my own Nest, which I guess I'll put my bragging cap on. My own Nest is at like 160 tenacity, and so you know, this Nest was not necessarily going to be as hard to crack as far as reducing their max health, but I did really want to be able to consistently reduce their max health, and you can see that at that last final mark, I was able to just melt her max health, and I was able to get the win there. 59 banners is just fine, and an undersized win is great. And really, I only have two other teams that are a threat at all. Really, only one, because First Order you can take out with almost any of my other teams that are remaining. Alright, so my next match was going to be up against the Nute team, just because I'm trying to tackle all the different teams from order of most threat to least threat, and Nute with Dooku can be a little bit problematic. So you want to just take out Dooku as fast as you can. If you can get the Alpha Strike and take him out right away, then wonderful. That's your goal. And then you see that Droidica was fast enough to roll up and put his shield up, and right as Luke had gotten his ability to ignore taunt, and so, you know, it was a pretty easy, obvious solution for Luke to just go in and remove Droidica's dreams of glory. And you know, one thing I wanted to note is every time that Nute put extortion on one of my characters, I did pay it off. I wasn't really that concerned about the buffs from extortion, and I was really concerned about the ability of extortion to just really ruin my day. Extortion can really wreck you if you're not careful, and in this case, like, my opponent didn't really have the platform to be able to use extortion a lot, but over time, like the Nute team, if it can survive long enough, it can really cause a lot of issues, and you're not able to kind of cope with all the different damage that they can do. Commander Luke is really a great option against that squad, just because even if you can't kill Dooku right away, just, you know, if he's like Relic 7 or something, at least you're going to get a stun off on him, so you can kind of work on him and try to finish him off early on. Now, I did try to take my First Order team against my opponent's First Order team here because we have some feats specifically involving the First Order, and those feats are trying to get kills with one of the 2 Kylos, and the other one is trying to get a win with 3 First Order military characters, and that means non-Kylos. So I have my bases covered here on both ends, and you'll see that I'm kind of doing things a little bit differently. I'm trying to like whittle these guys down so that my Kylos can just jump in and get kills, because they have to get, I think, 12 kills over the course of the next couple weeks, and who knows how difficult of teams they're going to have to be facing. And so if I can get a few kills with my Kylo team right now, specifically with Kylo, then it's going to make things a lot easier to try to get all these feats accomplished. I know I didn't mention it at the very start, but my opening sequence is always with First Order Officer goes, he feeds turn meter to original Kylo, who then does his AoE, and that AoE feeds turn meter to the entire rest of my team so that my entire team can go first. And you can see here the First Order Stormtrooper is like almost dead, and I decided to hit someone else with the Stormtrooper just because I wanted to get the kills with Kylos. And you know, in the end, this actually ended up costing me banners, these decisions, and that's not necessarily my favorite thing, but in the end, like we gotta accomplish our feats to be able to win. And I wasn't really afraid that I was going to lose this match if I didn't get a few kills here. I wanted to be able to get all of my feats, and I wanted to be able to win the overall match. But if I lost the match, I felt pretty confident that I'd be able to still beat my opponent, just because of the previous fails that they had on me. So even if they were able to full clear me, I would still probably be able to full clear them, and one loss against First Order is probably not the end of the world in terms of banners. And you can see the ridiculous lengths I'm going to try to preserve these characters for the Kylos to be able to jump in and finish them off. And that's not necessarily the best strategy here. I'm feeding a ton of turn meter to the Kylo Ren Unmasked, and I'm getting a lot of kills here. I'm hoping that this final thing is going to be able to give me the opportunity to take him out and get 5 total kills against First Order with my own First Order, which is pretty great. But Executioner decided that he wanted some of the glory, and I got 58 banners here. I probably could have gotten 59 or 60 if I had played the efficiency game a little better, but I was playing the feat game instead. So my opponent actually had a Negotiator squad that was really strong, like so strong, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But it was a 6-star Negotiator, and all of his pilots are like Relic 7. It's truly ridiculous, and I had been fairly certain that my opponent wouldn't put that on defense, but they did, and so I had that to deal with. But first I needed to take out this last squad, and there's a Qi'ra team with all the timeout guys, and I wanted to take Traya against it because this team just kind of melts to the Traya squad. Traya doesn't always get this duty, but I do love the opportunity every once in a while to be able to use this squad against a timeout team, because Nihilus is the ultimate counter to timeout teams. Like, it doesn't matter, like, if L3 starts getting some crazy stacks, all of her special ability keeps going up, and she's really tough to kill through normal means, like, it's not really an issue. Like, you can eventually just annihilate her with Nihilus. Like, it's really nice to just have kind of an easy mode version against this timeout team. And you look at these different characters, and there are no teeth here at all. Like, Cad Bane is probably the strongest hitter, and he can do some damage once he gets some relic levels and everything, but I mean, just one character trying to take out the Sith trio and Thrawn, it's probably not going to happen. And so I wasn't really concerned about health. I did want to make sure that I could regenerate some of my protection if possible, but with Traya, you kind of just assume that you're going to be down protection on most of your characters at the end. There are a few things you can do to mitigate that, and that's eventually why I ended up taking Thrawn. Actually, I don't really need him in this matchup either, but having Thrawn available to regenerate a little bit of protection is nice, and be able to block some of the madness in terms of all of the different taunts and everything, all the different layers of protection they're trying to afford Vendor Chewie. as it stands, like there just wasn't much this team can do. They're completely overmatched. Total just noob stomp here, and poor Cad Bane is wondering why he got stuck with a bunch of incompetence, because he is actually kind of a really cool character. 59 banners, that's great. That means I only dropped protection on 2 of my characters, and I had successfully cleared my opponent's teams. They only had 7 total teams, so that's fine. But now I get to face this Negotiator team, and you can look at their pilots. Disregard Padme, because she's not a pilot, obviously. But Relic 7 Kenobi, Relic 7 Anakin, Relic 6 5s, and they all had 6 emods, so it was really going to be tough to beat this squad. Luckily for me, I had my own Negotiator, which was significantly slower. My General Kenobi's only like Relic 3 or something like that. My Anakin's the same as theirs, and 5s is a step slower. So, you know, I'm not completely defenseless against this, but it was going to be pretty tough because their Negotiator is faster. It's a 6-star versus my 5-star, and I just wasn't relishing this matchup. You know, ships have a lot of RNG, and there can be issues involved. Even though I have my technique down, I think, you know, I have a lot of practice on my own ship shard, which is starting to get really whaley and really tough to beat. This match was something I was a little bit nervous about, so I was glad that my opponent had put this in there, though, because I wanted that challenge. I wanted to be able to face it, so I guess we'll see what happens. Keep in mind that if my opponent full clears me and I fail this attack, there's a decent chance that I just won't win this match at all, even though I've had a pretty good start.
What did I tell you fellas about shooting?
Aim small, miss small.
Aim small, miss small. Boys, Samuel, steady.
Going into this fight, I felt relatively confident, and one of those reasons is because I have a pretty decent method of trying to be able to take out a faster Negotiator squad, and a lot of my strategy is actually derived from my friend Klesso, which I will link to his video about this, it being able to take a faster Negotiator out, but you can kind of see it here as well. You know, just on display. It's a tricky situation, just because Negotiator, if everything goes well for your opponent, is they're going to go first with their Negotiator and shoot their AoE off, and the AoE does days on your characters, and that kind of spells the death of your fleet. And so, you know, it kind of makes it a speed meta, and you want to be careful to try to avoid that. And so, you know, the key here is to try to target and do some damage to their Anakin. And if you can do some damage right away to their Jedi Knight Anakin, even if you're not killing him because, you know, he has that protection buff on him, the opponent's Negotiator AI is going to be dumb and apply its buff to the squad instead of doing its days AoE. And so once that happens, you can have your own Negotiator go and put days on everyone else, and the tables are kind of flipped. And that doesn't mean that the fight is necessarily over, especially if your opponents have a really strong fleet, a really strong everything going into it. But then you take your 5s as your first reinforcement, and he comes in, everyone's target locked, and he comes in and does a huge hit with his AoE. And so you can see I haven't killed anyone yet, but I definitely have the momentum. I have a bunch of good health and protection on all my ships. And you know, there's a ton of debuffs on everyone, and now I can buff all of my ships again, make sure that they don't die off of just one random AoE or something like that. Seeing that Clone Sergeant with the taunt was kind of frustrating, but in the end, like, I was able to clear his protection relatively quickly. And then Jedi Knight Anakin actually did an AoE while Ahsoka had her retribution up, and she just killed him during his own turn. So that was kind of nice, but it wasn't really going to be problematic. I could have targeted him with anyone right after he did his AoE. So then I took in Plo Koon next after that as a reinforcement, and that heals everyone and it clears all your debuffs. And at this point, like, once you've taken out Jedi Knight Anakin, the threat of the rest of these ships is pretty negligible. Like, they can all do damage, and they can still absolutely time you out if they're able to get a couple key kills in on their own as well. But you would just want to keep the pressure on. You want to keep doing damage, and my opponent's squads here, or rather ships here, are not necessarily doing that well. 5's got a 2-fer there, which is nice, and it's all over but the Cryon. And, I kind of wanted to use my basic to be able to finish him off, but using Y-Wings is just too fun. So getting 59 here, I think 60 is the max if you take the max number of ships. So I'm happy with 59. That's pretty dang good. That's probably the best score I'll ever get in ships, if we're being honest. And that meant that I full cleared. Getting 1920 is a fine score. I think that its equivalent is about 1910 from the last couple seasons, so I was pretty efficient here. Anyways, I took a screenshot after I'd claimed all my feats here. I got 4 kills with Kylo, and I also got the feat for being able to clear a squad, get a win with my 3 military characters with First Order, so that was nice, a nice little bonus. My opponent had failed an attack on my Asajj team and my Grievous team. In my back zone that they had revealed, they just didn't attack at all. Like, they didn't bother, I guess. I don't really know. Like, once I had cleared them, then I guess they saw that they weren't going to be able to win. They also failed twice against my Nute Nest Watt team, and they failed twice against my Jango Bounty Hunters team. And then they didn't even see what ships I had. They probably just assumed that I had a Negotiator on offense because I took out their Negotiator with most points. But anyways, after that, I was talking to my opponent here, and I was telling them that I felt a little bad that they were probably the recipients of just some bad RNG, trying to take out my own squads. I mean, after all, they were in Kyber previously. They had a pretty close banner count to what I had, and so really, like, the fact that they had failed so many times was really surprising to me, and their response was just that just because the Grand Arena rewards were so bad that they just weren't trying and they were experimenting with other teams, and that was the source of this failure. So and frankly, even though my pride wants to say, like, oh great, like my teams are good, they worked, they all my remods were beneficial, everything was great, I think that probably the fact that he had failed this many times is indicative of the fact that he was just experimenting. And so I guess we'll see what happens in the future, but at any rate, I was able to get the win. And my rebuttal to him saying that that the rewards are bad is, frankly, I think that the rewards were always bad. Not having Zetas is sad, and the rewards are significantly worse, and it really kind of frustrates me, but otherwise I just play for the joy of it. I really enjoy playing Grand Arena, as hopefully you guys can see. So anyways, I did get the win, and despite the fact that my opponent hadn't really tried at all.
Cool.
And frankly, I wasn't really that convinced that my opponent hadn't tried all the way. They did set a pretty strong defense, and I got some pretty good experience against some strong squads, and so definitely not a waste. And trying to beat that Negotiator team was pretty nerve-wracking, but I was able to win. And before I go, guys, I did want to mention something. I've been meaning to say something, but I apparently just totally skipped it at the start, so hopefully the tail end here will suffice. Which is probably what she said, but that's beside the point. My friend Solo, who does my podcast with me, and go listen to our podcast, please. It's linked in the video description. But otherwise, my buddy Solo has started doing a bunch of Grand Arena videos, and I should say just one so far, but he intends to do the entire season here, and it's really a great opportunity to see him as he attacks. Like, he's going to be making commentary as he's doing his hits and everything. He has his first video uploaded, and I would highly recommend checking that out. He's a really skilled player. He's going to be able to share some really great insights, and highly recommended. So that will be the top link in my video description below. So please go check him out. Give him a sub, give him a like, give him nothing. I don't care, but actually I do care. Please just go check it out. I think he's going to be really big here pretty soon. So at any rate, guys, I think I'm gonna call it quits here. My next opponent also has a really great roster, so look forward to showing you guys that match. Thank you all so much for watching, and remember that in all things, Xaereth prevails.